Scientists X-rayed the skeleton of a 130,000-year-old man. What they discovered next was terrifying. What would happen if one day archaeologists dug deep beneath the earth and uncovered secrets capable of completely changing everything we know about history? What caused a Neanderthal man to remain at the bottom of a deep pit for more than 130,000 years? Why have dozens of human skeletons been discovered inside ancient temples, wells, and mysterious mass burial sites? Were the children buried alongside powerful figures in ancient civilizations truly sacrificial victims? And how could a small clay vessel tell the story of deadly battles that took place nearly 2,000 years ago? You know, despite centuries of research, archaeology remains one of humanity's most mysterious fields of study. Every time a layer of ancient soil is uncovered, new discoveries emerge, bringing with them a flood of questions that even scientists cannot fully answer. There are skeletons whose exact causes of death remain unknown. There are artifacts that seem to tell stories never recorded in history. And there are archaeological sites that have sparked years of debate among experts, yet still have no definitive explanation. Hello, and welcome back to Ancient History. In today's video, we'll explore some of the most shocking and unexplained archaeological discoveries ever found. From ancient human remains shrouded in mystery and strange ceremonial temples, to forgotten battlefields and artifacts that have astonished researchers. Each discovery is like a missing piece of the past. Together, they help us see the ancient world more clearly, while at the same time revealing secrets that even today, no one has been able to fully unravel. So, are you ready to join me on a journey back through time to uncover some of the strangest mysteries waiting ahead? If so, let's begin right now with our very first discovery. The skeleton of a man trapped in a deadly pit for 130,000 years. Imagine walking across a wild, untamed landscape more than 130,000 years ago. There were no roads, no lights, and no signs of civilization anywhere around you. One wrong step, and you could disappear from the world forever. That is exactly what happened to a Neanderthal man whom scientists today call Altamura man. His story began with a tragic accident, yet it ultimately became one of the most astonishing archaeological discoveries ever made. More than 130,000 years ago, this man is believed to have accidentally fallen into a massive deep pit in what is now the town of Altamura in southern Italy. No one knows exactly how it happened. Perhaps he was hunting, searching for food, or simply traveling across land he knew well. But the deadly pit lay hidden from view. The most terrifying part was not the fall itself. According to researchers, Altamura man likely survived the initial fall. However, he became trapped at the bottom of the deep shaft with no way to escape. No one came to rescue him. There was no chance of survival. Eventually, he died alone in the cold darkness beneath the earth. As tens of thousands of years passed, nature quietly concealed the site. Sediment gradually filled and sealed the original pit, creating an underground chamber that was nearly impossible to access. Ironically, this process protected the skeleton from predators and outside disturbances. As a result, Altamura man became one of the most complete and best-preserved Neanderthal skeletons ever discovered. It was not until 1993 that explorers first spotted his skull inside a complex underground cave system. Reaching the site, however, proved to be an enormous challenge. Researchers had to squeeze through extremely narrow passages for about 20 minutes before arriving at the location. Because of these difficult conditions, scientific study of the remains remained severely limited for decades. Fortunately, modern technology has opened new doors in recent years. Rather than excavating the skeleton directly, experts have used high-resolution photography, X-ray imaging, and detailed video recordings to examine different parts of the remains. Research published in the journal PLOS has revealed new insights into this ancient individual. Earlier, in 2016, DNA analysis taken from a shoulder bone confirmed that Altamura man was a Neanderthal who lived approximately 130,000 to 172,000 years ago. However, what especially captured scientists' attention this time was his jaw and teeth. The findings showed that Altamura man was an adult and had lost 2 teeth before his death. This is a relatively rare discovery because Neanderthals are known for having exceptionally strong teeth. Some exposed tooth roots suggest that he may have suffered from periodontal disease. Hardened tartar deposits were also found on several lower molars. These teeth tell more than just the story of his health, they also reveal how Neanderthals survived. Scientists observed that Altamura man's front teeth were significantly larger than those of modern humans. Neanderthals often used their front teeth as a third hand, gripping pieces of meat or animal hides while cutting them with stone tools. The wear patterns on Altamura man's teeth indicate that he frequently engaged in this behavior as well. Today, despite years of study, scientists still have not been able to fully access the skeleton. A thick layer of calcite minerals covers much of the skull and bones. To uncover more of the secrets hidden within the remains, researchers hope that future technology may allow them to remove part, or perhaps all, of the skeleton from the deep underground pit. Yet regardless of what happens next, one thing is certain. After more than 130,000 years, the man who vanished into darkness continues to tell his story, not through words, but through every bone, every tooth, and every mystery that still waits to be uncovered by science. 1,000-year-old Viking grave containing the remains of a woman crushed beneath stones and her child buried in a terrifying position. You know, the world of archaeology is fascinating. Some ancient graves simply tell the story of a life that has come to an end, but others leave archaeologists searching for answers for decades without ever reaching a final conclusion. And the grave we are about to explore is one of those mysteries. Hidden beneath the soil of Denmark for more than 1,000 years, this burial site concealed the remains of two individuals whose burial circumstances were extraordinarily unusual. An elderly woman lay beneath two massive stones placed on her chest and leg. Beside her was a man buried in a strangely distorted position, with evidence suggesting that he may have been hanged before being placed in the grave. What makes this discovery even more remarkable is that, after years of research, scientists found that these two individuals were not a master and slave, as originally believed. They were actually mother and son. The story began in 1981, when archaeologists excavated an ancient Viking grave north of the city of Roskilde, Denmark. The burial site was named the Gerdrup grave, and from the very beginning, it attracted significant attention from researchers. Inside the grave were two skeletons buried together in the same burial chamber. However, the way they had been laid to rest was highly unusual. The man, estimated to have been between 35 and 40 years old, was lying on his back, but his body appeared twisted in a puzzling manner. When experts carefully examined the positions of his skull and ankles, they noticed several indications that his legs had once been bound together. His neck also showed signs of severe trauma, leading to the theory that he may have been executed by hanging before burial. Yet the mystery did not end there. Lying beside him was the skeleton of a woman approximately 60 years old. Two large stones had been deliberately placed on her chest and right leg. Researchers noted that this burial practice was not unique. Similar graves have been discovered in Denmark, Sweden, and Iceland, where bodies were found pinned down with stones in much the same way. However, the true purpose of this practice remains a major mystery to this day. Initially, archaeologists believed the woman may have been a noble figure, while the man was a servant or slave buried alongside his mistress after her death. This theory gained additional support when an object resembling a spear was discovered near the woman. In Viking society, weapons were traditionally associated with men and the warrior class, but modern technology would completely change the story. The latest DNA analysis revealed that the two skeletons were actually related as mother and son. This surprising discovery overturned many earlier theories and raised a host of new questions. If they were close family members, why were they buried at the same time? Why was the mother weighed down by heavy stones? And what exactly happened to her son? As researchers continued their investigations, they noticed striking similarities between the Gerdrup grave and a famous Icelandic tale from the Middle Ages. In that legend, a sorceress named Katla was sentenced to death by stoning, while her son Odd was executed by hanging. The similarities were so remarkable that scientists began asking a new question. Could the woman in the Gerdrup grave have once been regarded as a witch? And could the spear-like object found beside her actually have been a ritual staff used in mystical ceremonies? Of course, no evidence strong enough to confirm this theory has ever been found. Some researchers have even considered the possibility that the man was never murdered at all and may have died of natural causes. Yet even if that theory is correct, the mystery of the Gerdrup grave remains unsolved. There is only one fact that scientists have been able to confirm with certainty. The mother and son were buried at the same time. The soil layers above the grave clearly demonstrate this, but the biggest question has remained unanswered for more than 1,000 years. What happened that led a mother and her son to be laid to rest together in this strange grave? Was it an execution, an ancient ritual, or a tragic story that history has accidentally forgotten? What do you think the answer might be? Let us know in the comments below, and let's discuss this fascinating mystery together. 24 skeletons of 10th century warriors, buried with weapons, leave archaeologists astonished. As you know, history sometimes reveals itself in ways no one could ever expect. Some secrets remain hidden beneath the earth for thousands of years until one day they are unexpectedly uncovered by people who are not archaeologists at all. And the story we are about to explore began in exactly that way. While construction workers were installing a gas pipeline through a quiet rural area of Poland, they accidentally stumbled upon a doorway leading back more than 1,000 years into the past. No one could have imagined that beneath their feet lay the final resting place of people who had lived during one of the most turbulent periods in European history. When the first signs of graves appeared, construction was immediately halted and local authorities were notified. Before long, archaeologists arrived at the site in Borkowo and began an emergency excavation. At first, they assumed they had discovered an ordinary ancient burial ground, but the deeper they dug, the more astonished the experts became. Beneath layers of soil that had remained undisturbed for centuries was a cemetery dating back to the 10th century. One skeleton after another gradually emerged, each carrying a story that had never been told. In total, archaeologists uncovered 25 male skeletons, 24 of which had been buried with various types of weapons. This was an exceptionally rare discovery, as not every medieval cemetery contains such a large number of warriors interred in this distinctive manner. The find immediately raised a series of questions. Who were these men? Why were they buried with weapons? And what brought them all together in the same location? Based on preliminary dating results, researchers believe the remains may date back to the reign of Duke Mieszko I, the ruler widely regarded as the founder of a unified Polish state, who ruled from 960 to 992. Of course, this remains only a hypothesis, but if it proves correct, the men buried in the cemetery may have been warriors who served under this legendary duke. They could have been elite fighters who participated in battles to defend the territory or helped build a nation that was still in the process of forming. However, what particularly captured the attention of researchers was not just the human remains. Inside the graves, archaeologists also discovered a large number of valuable grave goods. Sharp arrowheads, battle axes, blades, metal rings, and even strings of red agate beads had been placed beside the deceased. These artifacts suggest that these were not ordinary members of society. They may have been warriors who also held positions of status or possessed considerable wealth for their time. The more archaeologists studied the cemetery, the more unusual features they discovered. According to the customs of many pagan communities of that era, the dead were often buried with personal belongings and valuable possessions. Early Christians, on the other hand, generally followed different burial traditions. What makes this cemetery especially fascinating is that it appears to show evidence of both worlds. On one hand, the deceased were buried intact rather than cremated. This was a characteristic commonly associated with Christian traditions, which were gradually spreading throughout the region at the time. On the other hand, the practice of burying the dead with numerous weapons and grave goods clearly reflects long-standing pagan customs. This blend of traditions has led researchers to propose that the cemetery was established during an important period of religious and cultural transition in the region. Yet the greatest mystery lies in the arrangement of the graves themselves. Typically, medieval cemeteries were organized in relatively orderly rows, but at Borkowo, everything seems quite different. The graves appear to be distributed in a seemingly random pattern, with no obvious order or structure. This has left even the most experienced experts puzzled. Could this be the resting place of a group of warriors buried after a major battle? Or was it a community living through a period of transition, when old beliefs were gradually giving way to a new religion? To this day, the answer remains buried deep in the past. But one thing is certain. This accidental discovery beneath a construction site has opened an exciting new chapter in history, helping us better understand the people who lived more than 1,000 years ago. And who knows, perhaps the cemetery's greatest secrets are still waiting to be uncovered in future excavations. That certainly seems possible because history has always had a way of surprising us, hasn't it? 336 ancient weapons from the legendary Battle of Manzikert discovered beneath the soil of Turkey. Some battles have changed the fate of entire nations. Some battlefields once echoed with the thunder of horse hooves, the clash of swords and spears, and the battle cries of tens of thousands of soldiers. Yet as time passed, everything gradually disappeared. Fields once scarred by war returned to their peaceful state, while memories of those conflicts survived only in the pages of history books. But what would happen if one day the very ground itself began returning perfectly preserved evidence of a battle fought nearly 1,000 years ago? That is exactly the story astonishing archaeologists and historians in Turkey today. The story begins in the Malazgirt district, a region located in eastern Turkey. It was here that archaeologists carried out what has been described as an exceptionally important excavation. As you may know, this is no ordinary location. Malazgirt was the site of the famous Battle of Manzikert, one of the most significant battles in the history of the region. It was here that Sultan Alp Arslan, the second sultan of the powerful Seljuk Empire, achieved a decisive victory that opened an entirely new chapter in the history of Anatolia and the medieval Islamic world. For centuries, historians could only imagine the battle through ancient written records. They knew that tens of thousands of soldiers had once faced each other on this battlefield. They knew that blood had been shed on this land. Yet direct physical evidence from the battlefield itself remained extremely rare. That is why the excavation conducted by specialists from Mulla Sitka Koçman University produced results that far exceeded expectations. As layer after layer of soil was carefully removed, ancient metal objects gradually began to emerge. At first, only a few scattered fragments were uncovered, but the deeper archaeologists dug, the more astonishing the discoveries became. In total, researchers uncovered 336 military-related artifacts, including arrowheads, spearheads, and numerous other metal objects. According to preliminary assessments, the majority of these artifacts appear to be directly connected to the famous Battle of Manzikert. The discoveries did not stop there. Experts also unearthed a wide variety of additional military items, including maces, axes, daggers, fragments of broken swords, horseshoes, and even the nails used to secure horseshoes. These findings are giving researchers a far more realistic understanding of the equipment, tactics, and combat conditions of medieval armies. Even more remarkable, the excavation revealed another historical treasure. Nearly 1,000 ancient coins were discovered throughout the area. Most of them date to the Byzantine period, the empire that served as the Seljuks' greatest rival during that era. These coins are not only helping archaeologists establish the site's chronology, but are also providing valuable information about economic activity, trade networks, and political power during this turbulent period of history. However, the discovery that moved many people the most was probably not the weapons or the coins. During their research, archaeologists also uncovered 51 graves dating to the 12th century. Many experts believe these burials are directly or indirectly connected to the military events that once unfolded around the Manzikert battlefield. These human remains serve as perhaps the clearest evidence of the true cost of war. Behind every grave was a person who once lived, fought, and had loved ones waiting for them at home. Nearly 1,000 years later, they still rest in the place where history was written through bloodshed and courage. According to researchers, it is the combination of military artifacts and human remains that has created the most important foundation for this archaeological project. Thanks to these unprecedented discoveries, experts are gradually reconstructing the most accurate picture yet of the legendary Battle of Manzikert. And perhaps the most astonishing part of all is that after lying buried beneath the earth for nearly a millennium, this battlefield still preserves enough evidence to tell its story to the modern world. 77 skeletons, hidden beneath a 900-year-old city, reveal secrets about the end of the Viking Age. What do you think would happen if, beneath the busy streets of a modern city, there lay an ancient cemetery that had been forgotten for nearly 1,000 years? And what if the skeletons resting quietly beneath the ground could do more than tell us about the people who once lived there? What if they could help unlock one of the most important transitional periods in Northern European history? If you don't have an answer yet, then join me on a journey to Denmark, where an unexpected discovery has opened a doorway back to the final days of the Viking Age, and at the same time helped answer those very questions. The story began when archaeologists conducted an excavation at the site of St. Olaf's Kirke, also known as St. Olaf's Church, located near the center of the city of Aarhus on the Jutland Peninsula. At first, the project was simply a routine archaeological survey required before new construction could begin. However, no one expected that beneath what appeared to be ordinary soil lay a piece of history that had remained buried for centuries. As layer after layer of earth was removed, the first signs of an ancient cemetery began to emerge. Even more surprising was the growing number of discoveries. By the time the excavation concluded on October 30th, archaeologists had uncovered a total of 77 skeletons. Dating analysis revealed that these individuals had been buried approximately 900 years ago, during the medieval period, a time when Danish society was undergoing profound cultural and religious transformations. According to archaeologist Mads Raven of the Mosgaard Museum in Aarhus, one particularly important detail is that the excavated area represents only a small portion of the original cemetery. He believes that many more human remains are still buried beneath the surrounding streets, buildings, and modern infrastructure. In other words, beneath present-day Aarhus, there may still exist an entire lost world belonging to some of the city's earliest inhabitants. But what excites researchers most is not the number of skeletons that were discovered, it is the stories they silently preserve. By studying the burial positions, grave characteristics, and physical evidence found on the remains, experts determined that most of the individuals buried here were Christians. However, other evidence suggests that some people still carried traces of ancient Norse pagan beliefs. Think about what that means for a moment. Doesn't it suggest that this cemetery was used during a period when two major belief systems existed side by side? On one hand were the traditional Viking beliefs that had been passed down through generations. On the other was Christianity, which was rapidly expanding and gradually becoming the dominant religion throughout the region. This intersection of cultures and faiths is precisely what makes the discovery such a valuable historical record of a pivotal transition in Northern European history. Researchers explain that St. Olav's Church is the oldest Christian site ever discovered in Aarhus. The church developed during the same period that Norse paganism was declining and the Viking Age was coming to an end in 1066. It was a time when society itself was changing, from people's way of life and worldview to their spiritual beliefs. According to historical records, the church was built around the 12th century and was named after Olav Haraldsson, the famous king of Norway in the 11th century. After converting to Christianity, he became an important symbol of the faith and was later canonized as a saint. However, after centuries of change and upheaval, the church was eventually abandoned when the choir section of the structure collapsed in 1548. One of the most significant clues uncovered by archaeologists comes from the way the deceased were buried. Unlike typical Viking graves, which often contained valuable grave goods such as weapons, jewelry, and personal belongings, the graves found here contained almost no accompanying artifacts. This is a highly characteristic feature of medieval Christian burial practices. In addition, all of the skeletons were positioned in the same orientation. Their heads faced west, while their feet pointed east. This was a common burial tradition in medieval Christianity and reflects the deep religious beliefs of the people laid to rest here. For archaeologists, these 77 skeletons are like perfectly preserved pages from a history book that remained hidden beneath the ground for 900 years. They not only help us better understand the lives, illnesses, and beliefs of Aarhus's earliest residents, but also reveal how Christianity transformed the identity of an entire city. And it is entirely possible that as new excavations continue beneath the modern streets of today, even greater secrets about the final years of the Viking Age will once again be brought to light. The Death Well. Filled with the skeletons of Roman Empire soldiers. Can you believe that an ordinary water well, hidden beneath the ground for nearly 1,700 years, could preserve evidence from one of the bloodiest periods of the Roman Empire? And even more chilling, what if the bottom of that well contained not water, but the remains of people who had once fought in a life-and-death conflict? If that sounds unbelievable, then join me on a journey to the city of Osijek in eastern Croatia. Before the construction of a new university project began there, archaeologists conducted a routine survey excavation, as required by standard procedure. At first, no one expected the site to yield anything extraordinary. However, upon closer inspection, experts unexpectedly discovered an ancient well dating back to the Roman Empire. What lay beneath it was even more disturbing. Instead of everyday objects or typical archaeological artifacts, researchers uncovered the remains of numerous individuals piled on top of one another. After careful excavation and analysis, they confirmed that a total of 7 skeletons lay at the bottom of the well. What makes the discovery particularly remarkable is that the remains were still relatively well preserved despite having spent nearly 2 millennia underground. Yet the way the bodies were found revealed a deeply tragic story. The skeletons were scattered in various positions, showing no signs of a formal burial ritual. Some bodies lay on their sides, others were stacked on top of one another. One individual was even found in a head-down position. All of these details suggest that the deceased were not buried in the traditional manner, but were instead thrown into the well after death. The ancient well appears to have become an improvised mass grave. According to bioarchaeologist Mario Novak of the Institute for Anthropological Research in Zagreb, the individuals were likely stripped of all valuable possessions before their bodies were discarded. Not a single sword, piece of armor, or item of jewelry was found alongside them. This suggests that someone deliberately removed everything of value before attempting to erase all traces of the dead. When researchers conducted a more detailed analysis, they determined that all 7 skeletons belonged to adult males. Among them were 4 relatively young men and 3 middle-aged individuals. But the most revealing evidence was found in the injuries preserved on their bones. Some of the skeletons displayed clear signs of trauma sustained before death. One individual suffered a severe blow to the forehead from a blunt object. Another had broken ribs. Several others bore wounds consistent with injuries caused by sharp weapons. These injuries indicate that the men had experienced violent combat or extremely brutal confrontations before meeting their deaths. The discoveries did not end there. Researchers also found evidence suggesting that several of the men may have suffered from respiratory infections shortly before they died. This offers a glimpse into the harsh living conditions faced by soldiers in the ancient world. To determine exactly when these events occurred, scientists used radiocarbon dating on 4 of the skeletons. The results showed that the men lived during the second half of the 3rd century AD. Interestingly, this dating perfectly matches the only artifact discovered at the bottom of the well, a Roman coin minted in the year 251. Using all of the evidence they had gathered, researchers began piecing together the historical puzzle. The well was located in an area known during Roman times as Mursa, a settlement that occupied an important strategic position near the empire's military frontier. This location led experts to a compelling theory. They believed the 7 men found at the bottom of the well were most likely soldiers who took part in the Battle of Mursa in AD 260. This was a bloody civil war fought between Emperor Gallienus and the general Ingenuus, who rebelled in an attempt to seize the Roman throne but ultimately failed. According to surviving historical records, Emperor Gallienus imposed extremely harsh punishments on the defeated rebels after his victory. For this reason, researchers believe the skeletons may have belonged to men who fought on Ingenuus's side. After their defeat, they may have been executed, stripped of all possessions, and finally thrown into the well as a way of completely erasing the traces of the losing faction. Nearly 1,700 years have passed, yet that ancient well continues to silently preserve the story of these unnamed soldiers. It is a story not written in ink or on parchment, but carved into bones, battlefield wounds, and centuries of silence beneath the earth. Heartbreaking, isn't it? 1,800-year-old Roman pot reveals a bloody gladiator battle forgotten by history. Have you ever wondered what an ancient artifact would tell us if it could speak? Would it tell the story of a powerful king, a lost treasure, or a terrifying battle that history has long forgotten? We can never know for sure, but sometimes the greatest secrets of the ancient world are not hidden within magnificent temples or famous historical records. Instead, they are preserved in small, seemingly ordinary objects that few people would ever notice. And the story we are about to explore begins with one such artifact, a clay pot that lay buried beneath the soil of England for nearly 1,800 years. At first glance, it appears to be nothing more than an ordinary ancient vessel. It is small in size, standing only about 3.5 inches tall, and was made from local clay, much like thousands of everyday objects that existed during the Roman period. But when archaeologists took a closer look, they realized they were standing before a truly extraordinary discovery. The raised images molded onto the surface of the pot were not simple decorative patterns. Instead, they resembled a scene frozen in time, capturing one of the most famous and brutal forms of entertainment in the Roman Empire. The story begins in the city of Colchester, located in northeastern Essex, England. This was once one of the most important Roman settlements in ancient Britain. During an archaeological excavation, specialists from Colchester Museum discovered the unusual artifact. At first, they viewed it simply as an ancient ceramic object worthy of study. However, the more closely they examined it, the more they realized that the vessel contained far more information than anyone had expected. Analysis revealed that the artifact dates to approximately AD 160 to 200. To facilitate further study, archaeologists named it the Colchester vase. Although relatively small, the scenes depicted on its surface open a window into the dramatic world of ancient Rome. Engraved on the vessel is the image of a gladiatorial contest. The figures are shown facing one another as if engaged in a life-or-death struggle before a crowd of spectators. This immediately excited experts, because direct evidence of gladiator games held in Roman Britain is not always easy to find. Nearly 2,000 years ago, on the very land that is now England, thousands of spectators may have gathered in arenas to watch bloody confrontations between warriors. It was an era when human lives were sometimes wagered for the entertainment of the crowd, and this small vessel appears to be preserving one such moment. But the detail that truly astonished archaeologists was something else entirely. The surface of the vase contains not only images, but also clearly inscribed names. Researchers were able to identify two names, Memnon and Valentinus. These were not random names. In the world of Roman gladiators, finding the names of individual fighters recorded on an artifact is extremely rare. This suggests that these men may have once been well-known figures, recognized and followed by spectators, much like modern sports stars. That fact alone is enough to make the Colchester vase an exceptionally important discovery for the study of Roman Britain. Researchers believe the artifact may have been created to commemorate a famous contest or to honor the gladiators who participated in it. Every detail on the vase is like a surviving fragment of an event that took place long ago, yet still has the power to captivate modern scholars. What is truly remarkable is that after nearly 1,800 years underground, the vessel has preserved important details that help us better understand everyday life during the Roman era. It demonstrates that gladiatorial games were not confined to the city of Rome or the empire's major centers. They had spread even to distant regions such as ancient Britain. Today, when we look at this small artifact, we see far more than an ancient ceramic vessel. We see echoes of cheers from an arena that no longer exists, images of warriors who fought for honor or survival, and stories that history seemed to have lost forever. It is just a small clay pot, yet it is powerful enough to open a doorway back to one of the most fascinating chapters of the ancient Roman world. That's pretty amazing, isn't it? What do you think? 6 1,000-year-old child skeletons found beside a mysterious tomb reveal a chilling sacrificial ritual of an ancient civilization. What could make a family accept that their children would enter death alongside someone who had already passed away? That is the question that has continued to trouble archaeologists ever since a haunting discovery was unearthed in the deserts of Peru, and I think it may leave you wondering as well. Beneath the ancient mud brick walls of a city that once thrived more than 1,000 years ago, experts uncovered evidence of a ritual that is almost impossible for us to imagine today. That evidence came in the form of 6 children buried around the tomb of a powerful individual, as though they had been chosen to accompany him on his journey into the afterlife. The story begins at Cajamarquilla, a massive archaeological complex located on the outskirts of Lima, the capital of Peru. From a distance, the site resembles a giant maze built entirely from mud. Yet thousands of years ago, Cajamarquilla was one of the largest and busiest urban centers in the region. The ancient city covered approximately 413 acres and was once home to between 10,000 and 20,000 residents. Administrative districts, residential neighborhoods, and public structures combined to create a remarkably advanced city in the arid landscapes of ancient South America. During a recent excavation, an archaeological team led by researcher Peter Van Dalen uncovered a particularly unusual burial site. What astonished them was not only what they found, but also the way the remains had been arranged. Near the tomb of a young man believed to have belonged to the noble class, archaeologists discovered the remains of 6 children. All of them had been wrapped in burial bundles according to ancient funerary traditions. Rather than being buried together in a single location, the children were placed at different points around the entrance to the tomb. This unusual arrangement led experts to believe that it was far from a random occurrence. According to the research team's hypothesis, the children may have been relatives or close family members of the young man buried within the tomb. They believe the children may have become sacrificial offerings in a special religious ceremony intended to accompany the deceased on his journey into the world of the dead. If this interpretation is correct, it would represent one of the clearest pieces of evidence for human sacrifice ever discovered in the region. Analysis indicates that the remains date back approximately 1,000 to 1,200 years. This means the children lived during a period when Cajamarquilla was flourishing and playing an important role in the trade networks of the Andes. But the remarkable discoveries did not end there. In addition to the 6 child skeletons, archaeologists also uncovered 7 adult skeletons near the tomb. Unlike the children, these individuals had not been wrapped in burial bundles. This suggests that they may have played a different role in the funerary ceremony or belonged to a different social class. Alongside the human remains, researchers also discovered numerous bones belonging to llamas, animals that held great value for ancient South American civilizations. The presence of these animal remains suggests that funeral rituals may have included animal sacrifices intended to serve the deceased in the afterlife. At the center of the entire burial complex was the mummy of a young man. The mummy was discovered in November of the previous year inside a tomb measuring approximately 10 feet long and about 4.6 feet deep. According to experts, the man was only about 20 years old when he died. Although he died at a young age, the prominent location of the tomb and the scale of the surrounding rituals suggest that he may have been an extremely important figure in his society. For that reason, researchers gave him an impressive title, the Lord of Cajamarquilla. Today, amid the ruins of this ancient mud brick city, the discovery is raising more questions than answers. Why was such an elaborate burial ceremony conducted for someone so young? Were the 6 children truly sacrificed to accompany him into the afterlife? And what beliefs led an ancient community to accept and carry out such a haunting ritual? It may take many more years of research before scientists can fully unravel the secrets hidden beneath the sands of Cajamarquilla. But even now, these newly discovered remains have provided us with a rare glimpse into the spiritual beliefs, power structures, and mysterious rituals that existed more than 1,000 years ago in ancient Peru. And perhaps the most fascinating part is that this story is still far from finished. 1,000-year-old temple containing 29 skeletons, the secret of 2 ancient civilizations that shocked the archaeological world. In the arid coastal region of Lambayeque, Peru, about 466 miles from the capital city of Lima, lies an archaeological site known as Huaca Santa Rosa de Pucallpa. Today, the site consists mainly of weathered ruins made of adobe and mud, worn down by the passage of time. Yet more than 1,000 years ago, this area was an important ceremonial center where religious activities, spiritual practices, and perhaps even sacred rituals of ancient civilizations once took place. Recently, during excavations at the site, a research team led by archaeologist Edgar Bracamonte made a discovery that captured the attention of the scientific community. Hidden deep within an ancient temple was a burial area containing the remains of 29 individuals. What makes the discovery particularly remarkable is that most of the skeletons remained relatively well preserved, despite having been buried for more than a millennium. Among them were the remains of 3 children, a detail that has drawn special interest from researchers seeking to better understand the lives and beliefs of the region's ancient inhabitants. When the analysis results were released, the historical picture became even more fascinating. Experts determined that the remains did not all belong to the same period. Of the 29 skeletons, 25 were associated with the Mochica civilization, also known as the Moche, a culture that flourished along Peru's northern coast from approximately AD 100 to 700. The remaining 4 skeletons belong to the Wari civilization, a powerful empire that controlled vast territories throughout the Andes from the 7th to the 13th century. This means that the same site was used by 2 different civilizations during separate periods of history. It is almost like opening an ancient book and unexpectedly discovering that several chapters were written by entirely different authors. What makes the discovery even more significant is that it is considered one of the first pieces of evidence showing Wari cultural influence at such a great distance from the civilization's traditionally recognized sphere of influence. This detail has prompted many researchers to ask an intriguing question. Could the reach of the Wari Empire have been far greater than historians previously believed? The ceremonial center of Huaca Santa Rosa de Pucallpa is itself an extraordinary structure. According to archaeologists, the temple features a D-shaped design, a relatively rare architectural style in the region. The structure was built between approximately AD 800 and 900, during a transitional period marked by the interaction of several major cultures in ancient Peru. In addition to the human remains, the excavation team uncovered numerous valuable artifacts. Ancient pottery fragments found within the burial area have provided important clues about the daily life and ceremonial practices of the people who once lived there. Researchers also discovered the bones of several animal species, including llamas and guinea pigs. Both animals played important roles in the lives of ancient Andean civilizations and frequently appeared in religious ceremonies and sacrificial rituals. The discovery at Huaca Santa Rosa de Pucallpa becomes even more meaningful when viewed alongside recent research into the Mochica civilization. Previously, in 2006, the archaeological world was stunned by the discovery of the famous mummy known as the Lady of Cao, a powerful woman who lived during the 5th century. That discovery completely transformed the long-held belief that only men could hold positions of power within Mochica society. Instead, it demonstrated that women could also become highly influential leaders with significant authority. Now, with the discovery of these 29 skeletons inside the ancient temple, researchers have gained yet another valuable piece of the puzzle needed to reconstruct the story of the civilizations that once flourished across Peru. Every skeleton, every pottery fragment, and every surviving trace is quietly telling the story of people who lived, believed, and built complex societies more than 1,000 years ago. And it is entirely possible that the greatest secrets concerning the relationship between the Mochica and the Wari civilizations are still waiting to be uncovered beneath layers of ancient soil that have never yet been touched. Perhaps the most fascinating discoveries are still hidden underground, waiting for the next excavation to bring them to light. Dear friends, through the discoveries we've explored today, we can see that history still holds countless secrets waiting to be uncovered. Every skeleton, every ancient artifact, and every structure buried beneath the earth is like a message from the past, waiting for humanity to decipher it. Although modern science has helped us gain a deeper understanding of ancient civilizations, many questions still remain unanswered. There are mysteries that continue to challenge archaeologists, historians, and researchers around the world. Which discovery impressed you the most? And which mystery sparked your curiosity the most? Be sure to share your thoughts in the comments section below. We'd love to hear what you think. Also, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Ancient History so you can join us in exploring even more fascinating secrets of the ancient world in future videos. For now, thank you for watching. Goodbye, and we'll see you in the next video.